Welcome into ProBox TV's Who the Man. We discuss who the best fighter in a particular weight class is. This week, of course, 130 pounds. Why? Lamont Roach Jr. defending his super featherweight title this Friday, taking on undefeated Fergal McCrory of Ireland in his hometown, Washington, D.C. Huge moment for him, but 130 absolutely stacked with talent right now. When you look at the champions, you're looking at guys who are absolute murderers, not just hard punchers, but technicians who can do just about everything. That's why 130 pounds, so incredibly exciting. Just mentioned Lamont Roach. Oshaki Foster at 130 pounds, WBC, IBF, Anthony Cacace, and then Emanuel Navarrete is the WBO champion. Let's start with the man at the bottom, Jimmy Smith, in studio, joined, of course, via Zoom by Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi. Paulie, when you look at that list, Navarrete, not long ago, we were talking about him being the boogeyman at 130 pounds, but sluggish performance against Barinchyk set him back a little bit. Now he's faced Oscar Valdez. What do you think of him and his ability to rehabilitate himself moving forward against Oscar Valdez?
I'll tell you what, he beaten Oscar Valdez already, right? So it's sort of a rehabilitation fight against a guy that you've already beaten. He's, I guess, a few bars up from the Valdez fight, because going into the Valdez fight last time, not a lot of people were picking him. So the fact that he was able to get that win, I think, he seems to be a guy who we can't really get a clear head on a clear reading on what direction he's going to go and what kind of fighter he's going to be. There's been talk of him going to go on up to lightweight and fighting Shakur Stevenson and all that stuff. But really, at 130 pounds, he can be very, very dangerous, and he's a big 130 pounder, and it's the kind of fighter that really can give you a lot of problems. But we'll see, because he's, again, like I said, he's been kind of inconsistent in that way. A great record, fun fighter to watch, but a bit inconsistent in terms of being able to read him.
Now, Chris, the WBO ordered this fight to get away from the interim title. This would be a unified champion in the WBO, at least. When you look at this, Barinchyk a little bit heavier, but a flat performance. Paulie just said it, consistency. Is that the thing lacking from Navarrete?
I don't know if that's really the case. I think he actually has been one of the more consistent guys over the years. But, there's a limit. You can't just keep moving up in weight and expect to have the same results time and time again. And Navarrete, who was so dominant at 122, 126, 130, and even at 30, he didn't spend a lot of time there. And when he fought Valdez, I was one of the guys that was actually picking Valdez. Thought it was going to be a close fight, but I was picking Valdez. We were touting this as the next Mexican clash for history. But then Navarrete jumps up to 35. And Champ, you mentioned overconfidence. Yeah, that seems to be kind of the case. Like, I've been beating everybody up at 26 and 30. Why not 35? Who is this unheralded Ukrainian? Yeah, well, doesn't always work out the way you wanted to. Obviously, he's decided to move back down to 130. I am curious to see someone at his level, his age, his level of accomplishment to go backwards and move down in weight and to fight a guy you already beat. For a guy who's going to be hungry as hell to get that win back. Valdez is a very, very tough competitor. This is a very interesting fight. And I think a lot of the people that were picking Valdez before might pick him again, because there's a lot of interesting caveats to this matchup once again, even though it's happening after Navarrete has already dominated Valdez.
But let's talk a little bit about Oscar Valdez. Dominant in a 7th-round TKO of Liam Wilson. That was in March. Paulie, what do you see from him that makes you think maybe this rematch will be a little different?
You know what? Valdez is still a guy who's dangerous. He's a guy who has, shown to be a top flight guy. Listen, he's even in the Navarrete fight, going into the fight, a lot of people felt that he would win that fight. Chris just mentioned he thought he would win that fight. And I think when it comes to Mexican versus Mexican rivalries, you just never know what you're going to get. You're opening up a Pandora's box in a way where, you can, an instant war could break out. Valdez has always been consistent. He can box pretty well. He's an ex-Olympian. Granted, he's a bit slow on his feet. If you saw the Shakur Stevenson fight, you'd say, okay, maybe he can't box. But actually, this kid was a Mexican Olympian. He's got some good fundamentals when he wants to use them. But of course, has that Mexican heart and likes to go to war. I still think it's a very competitive fight. I think especially coming off that win over Liam Wilson, I think it's a confidence builder. I thought he looked good in the fight, and I think he's going to come in flying against Navarrete as far as his mental outlook is concerned, and the way he's going to feel about his chances to beat Navarrete. Plus, you have that I want to avenge the loss mentality, which always is a bit more of a push. And that's another reason where the interest could be brought up for the fight.
A question for you, Chris, about the weight class in general. We discussed this when we had our Hall of Fame discussions. On ProBox TV, had a great discussion about the Hall of Fame and who gets recognition. We all said it's hard to get recognition under 135 pounds. We've had stars at lightweight from Roberto Duran, now Gervonta Davis. It seems like 35, a lot of fans just not that educated below 135 pounds, but we have great fighters who have a ton of skills. Why is that the case, and has that changed over the last couple of decades, Chris?
Well, it's American fans because they are recognized elsewhere. And you look at other countries, you look at really south of South Florida, and you're going to have a lot of great undersized fighters that people are going to really cling to. Or you go east to Japan. Those guys are focused primarily on those smaller fighters, Philippines, and even some of the British fighters. They're more cognizant, I think, than the American fans. America's bigger, better, bigger, faster, stronger, right? That's what America's all about. We love our heavyweights. Listen, everybody loves heavyweights, but I think there's been a recent shift, and we're seeing it now more with the lighter weights. We're seeing it now more with the female fighters, and that people are coming out, and not only are they recognizing and acknowledging them, they're paying to go watch them. And that's the big thing. And when it comes down to the sport, but this is a business. Yes, it's a sport. Yes, boxing is the greatest sport in the history of the world, as far as I'm concerned. But if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. And if you're not selling, if you're not putting butts in the seats, nobody's going to really care. But the women and the smaller weight classes are now doing that. So I do believe there has been a shift, and a lot more people are far more interested, even in America, on this side of the world, in these smaller weight classes. And we're seeing that. We're seeing more recognition. We're seeing more money for these guys. And I think it's a good sign.
Well, speaking of recognition, we'll be ringside for the fight on Friday. Lamont Roach Jr., where does he stand in the 130-pound division? We'll tackle that when we come back.
June 28th, live from the Entertainment and Sports Arena in Washington, D.C., WBA Super Featherweight World Champion Lamont Roach Jr. will defend his title against undefeated challenger, Fearless Fergal McCrory of Ireland. Catch all the action live in Washington, D.C. on ProBox TV, or even better, download the ProBox TV app.
Welcome back into Who the Man here on ProBox TV. That's right, Friday be Lamont Roach Jr. taking on the undefeated Irishman Fergal McCrory in his hometown, Washington, D.C. Now, as we have said many, many times, fighting in your hometown, not necessarily easy, but when we were ringside with Lamont Roach Jr., he was chomping at the bit, incredibly excited about this first title defense. Paulie, what do you think you're going to see out of him if he wants to elevate his game and get a lot of recognition, get those big money fights? What do you want to see from him in his title defense come Friday?
Impressive title defense, a homecoming, a fanfare, and of course a fighter that people really look forward to wanting to see again. And that's the kind of performance we're going to need from Lamont Roach. He's a vet of the game at this point. He's been around for a while. He's been around the block. He's fought for world title prior to winning one. So he's out of these top guys, he's not exactly a newcomer on the block like maybe one or two of the other guys we may be discussing. He's a guy who's got plenty of experience, but he's just joining the title fray now. And of course, I expect him to be very hungry and be determined to wanting to make a statement.
In one sense, you want to do what got you to the dance, right? And that's been his boxing, right, Chris? Good combinations, got good speed, good awareness. When you look at his 24 wins, only 9 by knockout. That's what gets fans out of the seat, is the big punch. You said he's a surprisingly hard puncher. He punches harder than his record would indicate. Do you think he wants to sit down on those punches Friday or box your way to a win? What's your thought on it?
Nah, man. Dance with the girl you brought to the dance. That's what I think he needs to do. He needs to go out there and use his skills. Don't worry about knocking the man out. What I really want to see from Lamont Roach, this is where my head's at. I want to see how he deals with the moment, because I called the fight when he fought Jamel Herring, and he didn't show up. He didn't show up for the moment. That was his world title fight. That was his biggest big shot prior to winning the title, obviously. And he didn't show up. Obviously, against Hector Luis Garcia, he did. Now, though, it's different when you're defending. It's different when you're the favorite. It's different when you're that guy coming in and everyone's giving you all the praise. I want to see how he handles that pressure. It's a different kind of pressure. To a degree, it's easier, but to a degree, it's actually a lot harder. Fighting at home is a very tough thing to do. It has taken down many great fighters in the past in terms of when it comes to dealing with those kinds of at-home pressures, and when everything's on your side, people have let down quite a bit. We saw Matias do that 2 weeks ago. He went to a hometown defense, doesn't show up. I want to see Lamont Roach show up. I don't care how he does it. I would expect him to do what he does, go out there, use his boxing skills. Yeah, he punches harder than his record gives him credit for. Yeah, so do I. But still, I'm not going to go out there and become a puncher just because I'm excited for fans at home, which I've tried to do before. So I don't want to see that. I want to see him go out there and work and do what he does best.
Well, taking on an Irish challenger, an Irishman you are very, very high on, Chris. Anthony Cacace, 35 years old, looked outstanding his last time out. We were talking about it off air. Good power punching, dominant his last time out. What are your thoughts on him and his place in the division?
Yeah, we were just talking about it. The champ Paulian Malignaggi and everything. Yeah, this guy came out of nowhere. We watched the fight together, actually. And Joe Cordina, who I rated highly and has looked really good recently. I mean, Cacace beat him up. I mean, from round one and on. Headshots, body shots, couldn't miss. Was very, very technical and fundamentally sound. And then, when you look past the numbers, you kind of see that maybe this guy didn't come from out of nowhere. I just looked at his record. His last 4 fights, I think his combined opponent records were 74, 2-2. And yeah, they're not names that you really know. It's a lot of European fighters, a lot of, domestic guys. But still, I mean, you got guys who can fight. And he's been tested, and he had some split decisions in there. He had some majority decision there. But speaking of the moment, I just mentioned about Lamont Roach. I want to see him step up to the plate at the moment. Cacace did that. He looked phenomenal when he fought Joe Cordina. Can he do it again? Can he catch lightning in a bottle once again? We'll see. I mean, if he can, the things I saw from him that night against Cordina, he's a very, very dangerous guy.
Took you by surprise a little bit as well, Paulie, but he has apparently a mandatory IBF against Mexico's Eduardo Nunes. A lot of people think Nunes a dark horse in this division as well. Like I said before, what do you want to see out of him in this mandatory if it comes together to go to that next level?
Again, I mean, he's got to impress. He's got to show that the Cordina fight wasn't a sort of a lightning in a bottle type of moment. It was, a one-off, where you have a big upset. People didn't really know about Cacace. The champ Chris mentioned that, he had a tough run of it with a tough record of opposition and whatnot. But really going into that fight, you were talking about Joe Cordina, an ex-Olympian for England, a guy who was a world champion, and really a guy who you expect to have a bright future. Cordina had been very impressive. He's actually still one of the names when you talk about in this division, when you talk about the super featherweight division, 130-pounder, ex-world champion who's still got that resume. He's still a guy who can probably walk into a title shot himself against one of these other champions, even after the defeat against Cacace. But with Nunes, I mean, when it comes to Cacace face Nunes, you're looking for now a performance to sort of expand a little bit and show you that, okay, this is a guy who's here to stay. He was not a one-off. He's not a guy who, got lucky in a way, had a good night, or the champ had a bad night. This guy's for real. And that's what you're looking for here. I think that there's really no one in this weight class that has that right now, where it's like, whoa, this guy's here to stay. Navarrete kind of has had that reputation, but he's gone up to lightweight. He's gotten beat. He's come back down. So he's got a little bit of that vulnerability shown already in him. So right now, all these champions, what makes this weight class exciting is these champions. We've not even mentioned O'Shaquie Foster yet, but we're going to get to him. I think it's just they've shown some vulnerability. There's not a guy who can say, oh, this is a star power right here. 130-pound division has had before Tank Davis. It had Tevin Farmer not long ago, was a solid world-class fighter. It had Lomachenko.
Yeah.
Guys that you really felt were here to stay and could do a lot in boxing for years to come. These guys right now, you still are wondering. You're still wondering, which makes the weight class exciting. It doesn't mean that they can't get to that. They might be able to. We may see some guys that break through and go into that here to stay subject matter instead of a champion for the moment and gone the next moment. But right now, we still don't have that. And that's what makes this weight class exciting. We're trying to see who gets there. And when you have a weight class where guys have to get there, they're still trying to get there, it means they typically will fight each other. When guys are already in that here to stay situation, they're big names, typically they start avoiding each other because, there's too much to lose. It's got to be enough money. He's not exciting enough. All these excuses come out in the book and boxing fans get frustrated. But in a weight class like this, where there's not a superstar, I think this weight class has a chance for these guys to really take each other on in the not too distant future.
Parity
and also to that point, to that point, when you don't have a standalone guy that you're going to look to, it creates an opportunity for a breakout star. There is someone in this weight class who could step into position and dominate and be there for a long time. It's just who's that going to be, and that's why, again, like you said, Champ, this is a very, very exciting weight class for that reason.
Well, when you talk about excitement, you got to talk about O'Shaquie Foster from Ireland to Texas for our next fighter who's looking to make noise at 130 pounds when we come back.
June 28th, Live from the Entertainment and Sports Arena in Washington, D.C., WBA Super Featherweight World Champion Lamont Roach Jr. will defend his title against undefeated challenger, Fearless Fergal McCrory of Ireland. Catch all the action live in Washington, D.C. on ProBox TV, or even better, download the ProBox TV app.
That's right. This Friday, welcome to ProBox TV's Who the Man. This Friday, Lamont Roach Jr. in front of his hometown crowd against a fearless Irishman. It's not just about how he handles the body shots, the physical pressure. How does he handle the moment? Is he ready to be champion in his first defense? We're going to find out right here on ProBox TV. Do not miss it. Well, we're discussing the 130-pound division, and O'Shaquie Foster, the WBC champion from Texas, July 6th defense in Newark, New Jersey against the returning title challenger Robson Conceicao from Brazil, 18-2-1. This guy is just fun. He's an exciting fighter. Foster is electric. He's a lot of fun to watch. What are your thoughts on his ceiling, Paul? I mean, look at his style and his ability. What do you think the ceiling is for him?
I think he might be at the ceiling. I don't know, man. He's a cardiac kid.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Exactly what I was going to say.
he's a cardiac kid.
Yeah.
He's exciting to watch.
Makes
honestly.
him so fun, right?
But he could get beat at any given point. You know, he's one of those that you really want to tune in though, and you really want to root for him to stick around because he makes it so exciting. But and part of the reason he makes it so exciting is that he's probably reached the ceiling and he's on the verge of losing a lot. And honestly, I'm not quite sure he beats Conceicao, but I'm definitely gonna watch because this guy's exciting to see.
Yeah, stylistically, Chris, he has that X factor of like he's must-see TV, but part of that is the vulnerability, right? A casual fan can look at him and go, might win, might lose. It's going to be fun every single time. How important is that it factor in as you said it, a very crowded division?
No, that's why we're talking about him. I mean, he's fun for a reason. But Champ, you literally took the words out of my mouth when he said, "Where's the ceiling?" Hey, it might be Robson Conceicao. Conceicao can fight, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he had that fight with Navarrete, and it was a draw. And he came back from nowhere and was just throwing tons of punches in the 12th round. And he's an older guy too. I think he's a 35-plus-ish guy, year-old guy or around there and whatnot. But he
big and solid too. Yeah.
Big, solid, and then the Olympic background, I mean, huge for the weight class. I remember the first time I called one of his fights, he was cutting weight the night before, and I went to go run the treadmill next to him. And I was like, this guy's as tall as I am. And he's fighting at 130. You know, I was tall for 140. He was my size, running next to him on the treadmill. I was like, wow, this is a big guy. And he has kept that weight. He's kept fit. He's looked good. He's had some up and downs, just falling short of winning these titles. This could be his night. I mean, O'Shaquie Foster, like you said, shaped cardiac kid. I love that. He's another one that he pulls it out of nowhere. He'll be struggling. The 12th round will come. Everyone's exhausted, and then he just unloads with massive combinations, big power. He can really punch. He's another guy who's very big for the weight class. I watched some of his workouts. He's doing backflips and stuff. Incredible athleticism. Super explosive guy. Another guy really big for the weight class. This is going to be a fun fight. Conceicao likes to box. O'Shaquie likes to bang, but he can box as well, too. I think this is one of those fights that's really going to come down to those last 3 rounds to see who's going to separate and take the fight.
Now, when you look at the Conceicao fight, assuming O'Shaquie Foster gets past Conceicao, your thoughts on it, Paulie? What's going to take for him to beat some of these other champions in the division? Is it going to be the consistency? Is it about improving his boxing, or do you keep doing what you're doing and hope it pays off? What's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to make some improvements, be a little bit more disciplined, a little bit less reckless. But of course, I don't know that that's what he is. It's part of also what makes him dynamic. It makes him fun to watch. It makes him exciting. Like we've talked about, there's a lot of names in this 130-pound division. No superstars, but some really fun names there, both champions and non-champions. So I think one way or the other, if he's able to get past Conceicao, and this is a big if, I think there's a lot of fun to be had there. And you know what? If he keeps having the kind of fights he's having, he can maybe, and then Conceicao is one of those kind of fights, maybe a rematch with Conceicao.
A lot of
also they're all on the same side of the promotion. So Top Rank has locked up these weight classes. These guys can all fight each other. It's a very, very fun time for those Top Rank fighters.
Hopefully we see a lot of that champ versus champ activity, but a lot of people around the 130-pound division. We'll discuss them right after this. Welcome into ProBox TV's Who the Man. We're talking about the 130-pound division. It isn't just about 130, right? So many superstars floating around 130 pounds. Might get there, might come back to there. No, in a way, might be moving up. Of course, Lomachenko, not a natural 135-pounder. He's closer to 130. Gervonta Davis, eating ice cream the day before weigh-ins, weighs in, I believe, 133 pounds. A lot of people floating around 130. Who might be there in the next couple of years? The possibility a big name comes back down to 130 or moves up to 130. Paulie, let's start with you. Of the big superstar names, do you think any of them go to or come back to 130 pounds?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they do. Lomachenko is the kind of guy who would probably be able to make the weight, but he doesn't seem to get up for fights that don't really test him. And I think he's just past that level of fighter. No matter who the champion is at 130 pounds, he's looking at Gervonta Davis. He's looking at big fights that draw huge interest. He's past that, just trying to collect titles. If the guy's name is not big enough, so I don't see Lomachenko coming back. I don't really think Gervonta Davis can make 130 pounds that easily. He lost one world title on the scale already at 130 pounds, so because he was two-time world champion at 130 pounds. I think he lost the IBF title on the scale when he first had it at 130 pounds. So I don't think any of these big names come down to 130. If you're looking at non-champions at 130 pounds, I still like Cordina. I still think he can be fun. I still think he can be dangerous, and he can wind up in a title fight and be in a good fight. That's probably one guy that I'll look at. Oscar Valdez, of course, we're talking about with Navarrete. He's a guy who's been champion and could also be fun. 130 pounds is in and around there. There's no way who keeps going up in weight, although I don't know that he's going to be in such a rush anymore. Again, he's still a world-class fighter, but he did get dropped against Neri. He's gone up 4 or 5 weight classes. You do kind of have to slow down because your punch resistance does sort of get affected against bigger guys hitting you. But nonetheless, we may see anyway there. There's different possibilities.
Now, when you look at the names, Chris, the champions, we just went over the big names. Could one of those names get big enough to lure Naoya in a way to the United States to take one of them on? If there is one, what's your thought on it?
I have to agree with Paulie. I don't think any of those guys are going to go down. Lomachenko is looking ahead. He's always looking for bigger fights, bigger opportunities. And I get a little bit of like that Manny Pacquiao-ism where he always wanted to fight bigger guys, always wants to go up, always wants to challenge himself. I don't see him going backwards. And that's a tough thing to do for fighters, not just weight class wise, but also just in terms of competition. Yeah, could he go down to 130 and potentially wipe out the division and become undisputed because that's ultimately what he wants to do? Yeah, but it would take some time. And he is older, and making that weight when you're older, even though he is a smaller guy, I don't see it. And Gervonta Davis, listen, champ, you mentioned you don't think you make 130 that easily. Hey, listen, he was 3 pounds over. That 3 pounds is a lot. Talk to Ryan Garcia about what those extra 3 pounds mean when you're coming down in weight. So, yeah, I to your point, Paulie, I absolutely agree with you. I don't think either of those guys move their way back down. In terms of guys getting big enough at 130, it goes to what I said earlier. The opportunity is there for someone to dominate that division. Because all of the champions have little problems and negativities in their style, and they could lose at any time, any one of them. There's going to be opportunities for someone to step up and unify. And if there's someone who becomes a breakout star at 130, yeah, I mean, maybe in a couple years we can see anyway move up, but I don't think we're going to see him move up anytime soon. I know everyone's pushing him to do that, but I think he's going to be at 26 at least for another year or so. And hopefully the featherweight division, the super featherweight division can be sorted out by then. And we have someone who is a king.
That's what we're looking for, is a breakout star at 130. One step, Lamont Roach Jr. this Friday here on ProBox TV takes a big step. Don't miss it. We'll be ringside.